All right, Mohammed, welcome to Hidden Value. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to start with just a minute or two of kind of your background. How did you get where you are today, and what are you currently focused on?
Yeah. I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer, but I've done a lot of different projects that most engineers don't do. For example, I never got an internship in college for engineering, so I worked odd jobs. I worked as a filmmaker for 2 years and then did business consulting when COVID hit. Now I am running a business where I work with founders in deep tech, which is usually biotech, robotics, climate tech, energy, those really niche applications, but have huge impacts. And working with them to help explain their ideas more clearly to people. The reason for that is my background is also in writing, where I started publishing weekly fiction from 2020 to 2023, just on my own. Um, Through that, I learned how to tell stories like naturally. I didn't read any storytelling books or writing. I just started publishing and learned as I went. So now I'm applying that to tech founders and helping them explain their ideas more clearly.
I love it. I love the how you've taken different varied interests and backgrounds, and it sounds like you've combined them together into a pretty interesting niche for yourself. So now that you've been in this business for a little bit, I'd love to explore, what is kind of this moment that you feel like you're in? Usually I kind of describe that as a bit of a tension point. Like what's the current kind of challenge or dilemma you feel like you're facing with this unique idea that you've been building?
Yeah, so I'd say for me, it is just coming to that differentiation point where I do have that mixture of that storytelling and engineering focus with it. And then it comes out to for for a founder, one, why not just use AI, or why not just hire a general copywriter, or why do it at all? Because sometimes it's not even on their radar because they're too busy working on their main business than to
What
spend time on getting visibility with that.
What I'm maybe hearing is that you're finding it difficult to communicate the value of this skill set to the people you're working with?
Yeah, communicate the value, but and then also along with the method, I guess, like, what would make it different than other.
What's unique about it?
Yes, because I can say it's fiction, but what does that actually mean? Earlier today, there was a, uh, biotech founder that I was in contact with where he told me he was making an AI system for his marketing. And he asked me, like, "Well, so what would you add to that?" Because, like, we were expecting that to cover, like, 95% of our uh, marketing. And my answer to that was that at the moment, the way we use LLMs is that AI doesn't have the emotional context for when we use words. Like, for example, I was I was actually writing the response to him, and there was an AI checker that came up, and it said, um, I was using the word like AIs, like you need to spend more time fidgeting with it. But the word fidgeting got underlined, so like use a simpler word, use the word prompting because it's more accurate. But the word prompting and the word fidgeting both have different connotations with it. Prompting is more technical, like it's more technical and focused, while fidgeting gives that sense of that you're wasting time or it's just not working. There's more frustration associated with that word. That's what AI is not good at currently, unless you have to constantly prompt it and to tell it to be aware of that. It will not be aware of that on its own. It only just spits it out with you. And so it's like running into problems like that.
They're questioning the value.
Yeah, question value of that, and
And how clear do you feel about your answer to that? Do you feel unclear about it, or you feel clear and it's hard to communicate?
it's clear to me on why the value is. I think it's just on that translation
Yeah, the
thing,
translation.
which
Okay,
is
so I'm wanting to translate the value of what I do and the uniqueness to my target audience that I'm serving. That's what you're wanting right now, and you feel like your business is being held back by that ability. Does that sound right?
yes.
Yeah. Okay, so and I love that you brought up an example of someone you're talking with right now because this is a perfect example, right? There are these micro moments where this challenge you're feeling is presenting itself, like in this
Hmm.
interaction, like somebody questioning, well, why should I do this? Or what would you add? Or, in a discussion about the finer points about what you're providing. And what I wonder is, help me understand a little bit more of the context of what the people you're working with are wanting, right? And I think there's this interesting idea in business that sometimes what people sort of say they want and what they buy are slightly different, and we might buy certain things based on a little bit more maybe unconscious kind of desires, right? So they say that Starbucks and McDonald's abroad provide familiarity, right? And so maybe I want food, but actually I'm really wanting familiarity. There's something deeper that I'm actually wanting.
Got it.
And so what I'm curious about is let's zoom out. So, there's kind of the details of how language happens. What do these founders want?
Say at the core, they want recognition for their idea because there's a difference between a software startup and an AI infrastructure startup. For example, that AI infrastructure want to be what I would consider deep tech, while the software one would be like the usual Silicon Valley one. And the difference, what I've noticed, is that with the software one, a lot of the pathways are quick ROI or quick return or profit through acquisition. They get bought by some other larger company. But with talking with founders in that deep tech um, industry, they're a lot more long term and it's a lot more passion focused. They want to solve the problem because they care about it.
What I love about what's happening, I think, right now is you're seeing some patterns, right? Talk to that guy about it, talk to this person about it. You're seeing some connective tissue between the different clients. And what we're focusing on is what is it that they're wanting, not what's my background, what's my unique, right? That's an I question. What we're doing is we're flipping it to them, you, right? Their desire. And so what they're wanting maybe is recognition for this unique idea they're bringing to the world that has, a deep purpose for them. And without going on too much of a tangent, there's something a little bit interesting to me here about you wanting to communicate your uniqueness and them wanting to communicate their uniqueness, right? The freelance challenge you're maybe feeling is also the problem they're feeling. And that's actually very typical that we solve problems that we're having ourselves on
Right.
some level. But what this takes us to is starting there. So what I would offer as a place to begin is how can you speak to the problem that they're having in a way that they feel like, I totally feel understood. You totally get it. That's what you want to hear, right? The miscommunication, that's not what you want to, the defending the value, the why should you pick me over, that's the conversation you don't really want to be in. The conversation that would feel good for them, and then I think for you, is speak to the problem in a way that they feel like you understand them and said it before they even had to, right? So let me give you a quick example of what I mean by that. Talking to any of these founders you're speaking to, say, let me guess, there's all these, you know, B2C AI startups out there that are getting all this flash and recognition because they're doing this consumer use cases, but you've been doing the deep work of having a deeper purpose to bring forward the technology that you are working on. I imagine that you want to feel recognized or have the market recognize you for this important breakthrough that you're bringing to the world. And I imagine that sometimes it's difficult to translate the complexity of the problem to your customers, to the market. That's what I help people do. I help you translate that message for a mass audience. Like, how would they, I'm making this up here, right? But how do you think they would hear or respond to that type of messaging?
Like a lot of people, if they're in that stage and they're feeling that immediately, they would immediately get it, and they like poking holes, all right, because that's the type of founders they are. So I think they would agree, but they would also like question more, right?
And the question is great. So what
Yeah.
question, let's play it out. What question would they ask there? Because this is what I think you're working to build strong communication around. So, and I love the question. So let's bring it up. What would they say back after you present?
Well, what you said earlier is actually what I sent to that biotech founder who replied then
And said,
that we're already building this AI marketing system internally that we think will cover 95% of what we need. So like, how would you add to that?
right. Interesting question is what is that 5% that's not being covered? And it's important to know what are people trying already. So now we have a good example of this is a solution that some of your customers are trying. And this is very helpful because you can also say, let me guess, you're probably thinking that AI can handle all the marketing copy for you.
Hmm.
Let me share with you what I think that tends to miss. And this is where your expertise can come in. So you could definitely expect that question. I think is sort of up to you to have a good answer to that. So why is an AI marketing system not the right answer? What do you know that this person doesn't know, which is why they're pursuing that strategy? And how would you sort of concisely say that?
Yeah. So my response was kind of similar to what you mentioned. I pointed out that basically that 5% of what the AI wouldn't cover, that you have that emotional resonance. But the key part is that the AI would word vomit what you have as a company, but it can't really reproduce like that founder's experience, like that founder's journey of going from that initial spark to where they got to now. Yes.
So the AI can market the company, I market the founder. And actually, it's the founder story that breaks through more than the company story or something to that effect.
Yeah, because people follow people, they don't really follow companies as much. The reason we have those brands is because they have that story set in. And so you're following that.
I got you. So really they're telling you we have a marketing focus and an AI system that's going to help us market the company. And you're saying, no, no, I don't care about how you're marketing the company. This is a process for marketing the founder. What's your strategy and process for marketing the founder? Because what I've seen is that's more effective.
Right. Because from my experience when I've marketed other founders, the clients start coming to them so they don't have to worry about writing more grant proposals or doing like ads or things like that. People start finding them because of that story.
Yeah. And so you've got good experience and credentials and like history of this to show why marketing the founder is more important than marketing the company through that mechanism. And, I think it's good to say, okay, that's awesome. I'm happy you've got the company marketing happening, but I'm wondering how you're going to approach this other aspect. It's something completely different. That's actually not what I do. And I don't think I know you get this, but to say that explicitly, I don't think you want to be in that. It doesn't feel good, right? To be in that position of, tell me why you're going to help us with the last 5%. That conversation can't happen. You can't allow yourself to be in that context at all because that's not actually what you do. And so you're educating by kind of expanding their awareness to say there's company marketing and then there's founder, led marketing or whatever you want to
Hmm.
describe it. Here are some case studies about how I've driven results through the founder story and my process for doing that. So I think if you meet in that context, there'll be resistance and you've been looking for what's my unique angle, I would shift out of that conversation entirely. And some people won't get that. Some people won't get that. Not every customer, right, is for you, but it's something you can own, right? I guess how does this sound? Does this feel like it's what you're already doing? Is it staying more firm in this category that you're owning and avoiding that, meeting them in that dialogue that you can't win?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So it's just getting more because since I've been doing this for only 3 years, it's gotten a bit unconscious. But having you say that reframe of getting out of that instead of saying like, yeah, we already have our company marketing done. I need to instead of staying within their frame of reference of just company marketing, reframe it to saying that's great, but what I actually do is with you specifically, the founder, because having your story amplifies your company marketing even more.
And you don't even need to prove it. You can ask, okay, that's great. You've got all this company marketing going on. How is the founder showing up across social media, sharing their story? Tell me about that.
Mhm.
Let them fill you in on where they are, because if they're nowhere with that, then they've got opportunity. If they're doing tons already, then maybe it's less of a fit for you as a client. So I would explore by asking.
Yeah, yeah. Oftentimes, the way I do outreach is just getting to that part of like asking, um, because like the overall the way I approach is like a more umbrella and then dig down where hey, when you're explaining your technology or your breakthrough to people, are you finding that you're having to constantly explain why yours is important compared to someone else's? Because like everyone has that translation gap. And then if they say yes, or if they give like some variation of an answer, then we can dig deeper into like, well, how are you specifically doing this as a founder, rather than as just a company entirely.
Yeah, what's the founder marketing strategy at your company right now? I hear that you've got this whole marketing AI. I'm curious about that. Again, I'm finding something interesting about your own sort of journey and what the founders are facing. Like there's something of like how do I tell my story? How do they tell their story? How do I market? So there's something in that too that I think is kind of cool for your own unlock where as you learn to use and tell the uniqueness of your own story in a way that lands clients, you'll also have that internal experience to help your customers through, right? They're going to run into those same roadblocks. So that brings me to how do you feel like you've been showing up in that way, for yourself, telling your story, your journey? How much are you including that in your own outreach or marketing or
Yeah, for that, I don't think I've been doing a good job with that. It's been a bit of a mix um, where I share my own personal journey, but then also I would share just like my own thoughts on this technology. Like for example, Boston Dynamics robotics, like that the dancing robots basically that they had.
Mhm.
And then I would kind of break down their positioning and like as a company and why it was important to change that perspective and then link that to what I do. So in my own personal marketing, I'm still figuring out like how to convey that uniqueness because one aspect that I've been figuring out how to, yeah, that journey. And one aspect I've been trying to figure out was just that fiction focus because I know that there's something there that I'm not seeing yet with that with that mixture, like beyond just like the usual fiction for this group of people.
So the question is maybe like, how do I use fiction, my fiction background in my own sharing of my journey that creates interest or proof points for the customers that I serve? You're still discovering what that actually
Yeah,
looks like for yourself.
yeah, I'm discovering and trying things out along the way to see what clicks. Not with I guess not with engagement with other people, like more internally with me, where I can tell it's like there's something not right with this one.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's just something that you don't need to incorporate as much quite yet because you're still figuring out what that is, right? If you try to incorporate it before you feel clear, then this like poking holes type of experience maybe that you're feeling sometimes, can continue. But when it clicks and it gets really clear for you and you sort of see, oh, this is how I'm using this lens to promote my own personal journey, which leads to the business that I'm wanting, then you'll have a really strong kind of foundation to stand on when you speak about it. So it's sort of how might I let that be a development process and an exploration? But there's some fractal aspect of what we're talking about here, right? Of myself and to others, and I think that's a cool opportunity.
Yeah, it's something worth exploring because it's been a lot of unconscious uncovering where since I've been writing fiction for almost 6 years now, it's been so ingrained so that it's just now a lens that I need to view it from the other way. It's like looking at that analogy that people use of looking at the sticker for a bottle, but you're inside the bottle.
Let's land that. What does that mean for what you want to do or explore next?
What does that analogy mean, or that
Yeah, what is that sentiment you just shared? What does that mean for what you might explore next? What does that mean you might do, change, explore?
I would say for me, it would be trying things out more on my own. So rather than looking up how other people are doing it, just
Definitely.
define my own path. So that's what I've been doing a bit more recently now. Let me just try this out and see what comes out of it, and see what signals appear.
Mhm. And that'll help you explain some of how it's worked for you to relate to the clients you're working with.
Yes, one idea I'm testing right now is sharing basically a fictional story on LinkedIn, and then at the end saying, "I just got you to believe that this was happening with only like 100 words. Now take that and you can replace like these details and with your idea." And that's the
Mhm.
impact we're aiming for here. And just seeing how that resonates with people and with me as I write it in that
Mhm.
style.
Do you feel like how much do you feel it's about the company marketing versus the founder marketing because we that
Mhm.
was kind of like a different frames. What side of the spectrum do you feel like you're sitting on right now in terms of what you're leaning into?
I'm leaning into more of the founder led marketing,
Mhm.
and the reason being is because that's really where you get more. You still get both sides of like the company side
Mhm.
because the founder is the one who made it, and that company is that extension of their personality, their ethos.
So given the examples, the few you were thinking of, those 3, this founder, that founder, what would that mean for your approach now and how you communicate with them?
Would say focusing a lot more on what they themselves find different about the industry, because every company that gets started is because they themselves believe that there should be something different about this industry. You don't start a company because you're going to do the same thing someone else is doing, right?
Yeah. This is a great line of thinking, right? This what you're saying right now, and I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but what you're saying is this is like a pitch here that I'm hearing. Like, you didn't start this business because you wanted to do what everyone else is doing. Like, let me help you tell that story, that version, that vision of what you see.
Right. And when you start sharing that and other people start seeing that, you'll find people who align with that vision on their own.
Employees want to join, investors want to
Right.
join, customers who you know in your network want to join, right? That's even a bigger context now than a marketing machine AI just for signups or something. It's bigger than that.
It's much bigger than that. And I'm not, and I guess the other thing is I'm not saying that marketing machine AI doesn't have its purpose. It does, but this focus on specifically founders is that amplification of that. So like that marketing machine AI won't work as well.
Bingo. How do you feel saying what you just said? I feel way more excited and clear personally. How are you feeling? How did that last little bit? How did that feel for you?
Feels a lot better, and I'm glad this is being recorded so I can go back to this and put it down um, on paper
Hmm. The
so I can see
feeling
it.
is part of it, though, right? As well. That's why I'm curious how that felt to do, because part of what we were talking about earlier is this feeling just does not feel good when it's like, well, here's this 95% we're doing. Why are you the five? Like, it's just not. What I want to speak to is that you've got expertise, right? And so part of this feeling as well, I think when you're speaking is like, this is kind of you as the expert with a point of view. And it's just like clear. It's like, yeah, this is how I see it.
Right. Yeah, and it's just clarifying that point of view so it's clear for them when they hear it.
Yeah. I think that will be clear for, I mean, that's what I said again, just my reaction. I think we can go to next steps here, and talk about what you might do, but that's what you could test, right? So let's land on kind of what might you like, what are some actionable kind of next steps you might take from here? Yeah, given this conversation.
Um, well, the one obvious one is I'm still in contact with that founder who said he's doing the 95% marketing for his company. Um, and so going back to that and asking him questions on just great. So like, that's great that you had the company, but um, do you have anything for yourself as as the leader of the ship that you're driving? And just seeing their answer on that. So just doing more outreach on both the companies that I'm in contact with and just finding others and then asking them questions on what are you doing specifically to talk about your idea rather than behind the wall of the company.
I want to throw a quick quote out there, which is like, experts expand the problem, right? If they're in their own context, they don't know the field that you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing one problem, one solution. You're expanding the scope, right? So having expertise is about expanding the scope of their awareness to see that there's other possibilities, more possibility, greater opportunity than they were even seeing in their narrow view.
Right. Yeah. It's a nice quote. It's still like expanding. It's showing them what they don't know, basically, like
Which you
what they
know as an
wouldn't.
expert, because
Yeah.
you've spent a ton of time in this, you have proof points for this, like, and the more credibility you can back it up with, which you have, the more that they will hear that, but that is what we do as experts, right? Is we expand.
Right. Got it. Yeah. So I think that's where I'd go down of just leading more with that founder-led focus and asking questions on what they're already doing in that field and if that even is on their radar.
So I think it's that next step. And then the other thing is exploring for yourself, how is this showing up for me? How am I telling my own story and journey? How is that helping me do the things that I know fiction can do, or a fiction foundation for writing storytelling can do? Because you could also frame it that way, that it's a fiction foundation, and that's kind of your IP in a way, right? It's not that it's fiction directly, but it's that understanding that you've developed.
Right. Yeah. And I've been exploring that in different ways and even having people write their own fiction.
Break you out of your shell a little bit, and, yeah, totally. So, I think a great place to land is just any reflections. Like, what reflections, if any, do you have from our conversation?
I started with the reframe of getting out of that, that 95% thing that we discussed earlier, and then also um, explaining that it's complementary and it's an amplification of like the usual company marketing that they have, uh, being that founder focus, which basically creates a beacon for others to follow and make their lives ironically easier. What I've noticed is when I do the founder led marketing with other past clients is that they don't spend as much time on it afterwards towards the end. Someone went from 7 hours a week to like 3 hours just because like her story's working so well that it's just people read her old work and want to work with her.
That's a great story to tell, right? That I know right now it feels like you didn't want to do this because it's going to take a lot of time. And let me tell you about how it actually is less time, over time because it's so effective.
Right. Yeah. Because that's one of the biggest fears. And like, I don't want to spend time on this because I'm doing this thing that I'm actually passionate about. I'm like, it's perfectly fine with me. I'd rather you. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, let's get this up and running so that it can do the work of recruiting, do the work of selling, getting customers, and then it can be less time, but it's still a little bit a habit you can keep.
Right. Those were the biggest takeaways from that. It's like that reframe and then changing the conversation of it being complementary and expanding that scope, as you mentioned.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Yep.